Athanasius Kircher's Egyptian Chronology. This is Dynasty 20 on the Diapolitans. Dynastia viginti Diapolitanorum. Sub idem tempus quo regnum Judaeorum inter Roboam et Jeroboam fuit divisum, cum Aegyptus careret regibus, ex dignioribus tantum familis in regni gubernationem assumpti sunt, quos inter primum locum obtinet Cetes, quam Graeci Proteum appellant, quique Iliaci belli tempore in Aegypto florebat. Hunc artium peritum fuisse tradunt, et in varias esse formas vertere solitum, ut nunc animal quandoque arbor aut ignis, aut aliquid aliud videretur. Principio vi sus speciem subisse leones, mox aper inde draco fieri fera parades inde, in latices etiam se vertit, et arbore formam mutavit priscam, ramis ac fondibus altam. Arum autem rerum cognitionem et continuo sacerdotum consortio assecutus est. Diodorus vero ait insigniat ornamenta regnum Aegypti, quae variis rebus constabant, huius metamorphoseos fabulosae causam dedisse. Consuetudo, inquit regibus tradita, Graecis ansam cuius modi transmutationes figendi praebuit. Nam Aegyptiis mos erat regibus, aut leonis, aut tauri, aut dracones priorum partem in capite ferra insignia principatus, quandoque vero arborem, aliquando ignem, quandoque redulentia super caput unguenta, aictum ad decorum pertinebant, tum ad ornatum, tum stuporum, et superstitionem quandam ascipientibus insciebant. Mortuo Proteo, Diodorus in eius locum subrogat filium, per totam vitam vecti alibus, et ad cumulandos undique, tes arus intentum, pusili animi virum, atque avarum, ut qui nec deorum muneribus, neque uli beneficentiae vacarit. Ita ut non rex sed dispensator bonus, pro virtutis gloria plus auri argentique, quam praeteriti reges omnes, quadraginta talentorum milia ea fuisse tradunt, reliquerit. Post huius obitum septem alii fuerunt moderatores, in tantum otio ac voluptati dediti, ut sacra libri nulla eorum gesta conteneant memoriam digna. Praeter unius nilei, a quo fluvius primum fortitus est nomen, cum antea Aegyptus vocaretur. Hic cum multas fossas, easque opportunis fecisset locis, et nilum utilem ad modum incolliis redidit, et nominis causam praebuit. Hunc secutos putat Diodorus Chemnen, Cephym, et Mycerium, famosam pyramidum extructores, quam vis nos verius earum fundamentum dynastiae Politanorum transcribabumus regnanti, in quam Cheri, quius nomen cum Chemni confudisse videtur. Fuerunt enim illae multo ante Salomnis tempora conditae, ut alibi probamus. The 20th dynasty of the Diapolitans. At the same time when the kingdom of the Jews was divided between Rehoboam and Jeroboam, when Egypt was without kings, only from the more worthy families were taken into the government of the kingdom, among whom the first place was held by Cetes, whom the Greeks called Proteus, who flourished in Egypt during the time of the Iliad War. They say that he was skilled in the arts and was accustomed to transform himself into various forms, so that now he appeared as an animal, a tree, or a flame, or something else. At first he seemed to have taken the form of a lion. Soon he became a boar, then a dragon, then a wild paradilus. He also turned into a snake, and changed its ancient form to a tree, with thick trunk and branches high. But he acquired knowledge of these things from the constant company of the priests, Diodorus says, however, that the insignia and ornaments of the kings of Egypt, which consisted of various totems, gave rise to these fabulous tales of metamorphosis. The custom, he says, handed down to kings, provided the Greeks with the means of inventing such transformations, for it was the custom of the Egyptians for kings to wear on their heads an insignia of their princely power, either the front part of a lion, or a bull, or a dragon, sometimes a tree, sometimes a flame, sometimes fragrant ointments on their heads. These were sometimes merely procedural, sometimes for ornamentation, but they also caused stupefaction and amazement and superstition in those who beheld them. And so, when Proteus died, Diodorus replaced him with his son, who had devoted his whole life to taxes and the accumulation of treasures everywhere, a man of petty mind and quite avarice, who had no time for the gifts of the gods or for any beneficence. So much so that, not being a king, but a good steward, he left behind more gold and silver than all of the previous pharaohs. They say it was some 40,000 talents. After his death, there were 7 other governors, so devoted to leisure and pleasure that the sacred books contain no deeds worthy of any remembrance of them, except for one, Nilus, from whom the river Nile first took its name, whence it was formerly called Aegyptus. He, having built many canals in convenient places, both rendered the river very useful to the inhabitants and provided the reason for its name. Diodorus thinks that Chemnes, Kephus, and Mykerinus, the builders of the famous pyramids, then followed him, although we more accurately attribute their more ancient foundation to the dynasty of the Politanians, during the reign of Keri, whose name seems to have been confused with this Chemnis. For the pyramids were built long before the time of Solomon, as we shall prove elsewhere.